I'm not convinced it ain't no acting or accident what the track emits. You strapped with gas that you ain't even practiced with. The fact is, you couldn't hit the...
Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. Let's do a prediction show for Crown Jewel, which hopefully, I'll have the day off to watch. Which, I probably won't wake up until like 11 o'clock anyway. But let's talk about Crown Jewel. So it's a 9-match card, which means it's likely to be about 3 to 3.5 hours. Yikes, first of all. I can see some of these matches not being that long, but it should be a good in-ring show. I think from an in-ring perspective, from top to bottom, looking at the card. If you look at the card, it is a very strong card. The Saudi shows usually have strong cards. I don't go back and watch the Saudi shows too much, but this one looked like it might have some rewatchability to it. So that's a good thing. So let's start with Hell in a Cell, Edge versus Seth Rollins. This has been the feud that took over SmackDown, that pushed Roman Reigns to the backstage. Edge and Seth Rollins essentially took over the show, especially after the debacle with The Fiend. The Fiend, the demon, when the top rope broke. Roman essentially sat backstage, and him and Brock did very little. Edge and Seth Rollins took over. And you know what? It was a almost seamless transition because Edge and Rollins has been very good. They've had an extremely good feud. It's going to continue on Raw, apparently, because they've both been drafted to Raw. I would have thought that the draft would have separated them. I think Edge was drafted to Raw. I don't remember already, because the draft is almost a month ago now. In any event, this feud has been excellent. There are certain things that have taken... The story of it is that Seth Rollins is offended that Edge said that he is Edge light and that Seth Rollins is inferior to him. And so the mind games between two characters of similar mental acumen, both tacticians, both devious, evil men, trying to see which one could be more evil than the other. In this instance, Seth Rollins kind of took it to the next level by invading Edge's home, even though he didn't really interact with the family. He didn't, chop block Beth Phoenix or anything like that, which is, of course, I think we all would have preferred. But Seth Rollins, went into his home, violated his personal space, much like Seth Rollins did to The Fiend, and takes the feud to the next level, leading to the Hell in a Cell match. I think this has been excellent. I also think that while Seth Rollins winning would take him to a whole new plateau, and I believe that should be the goal, is to always push guys further and farther, Rollins, in a perfect world, should win this match. Why? Because Big E needs strong opponents. And there can be no stronger of an opponent than Seth Rollins, who would have beaten Edge 2 out of 3 times. And then also beaten him in a Hell in a Cell match in Saudi Arabia. Could be huge. At the same time, though, good storytelling dictates that Edge defeats Seth Rollins and exercises that demon. In doing that, Rollins doesn't lose that much. Okay? Sure, he doesn't get the big win, but he doesn't lose that much. Because Seth Rollins it's not like he's going to fall down a tier or 2 having lost the match. He's going to still be where he is, because he's at the point where wins and losses doesn't matter that much for Seth Rollins. His character is also at a point where he doesn't need a title. He can do personal feuds. He cut in 20-minute promos by himself, So they're putting a lot of effort into Seth Rollins. So I think you go with the good storytelling idea and just have Edge win. Edge defeats Seth Rollins. The WWE Championship, babyface versus babyface, Big E versus Drew McIntyre. I think Drew loses, of course. Big E is going to stay on Raw. Big E is going to be the WWE Champion. Drew McIntyre is just going to be another notch in his belt. There's really no heat for this feud, except for a couple of can they coexist segments, which were completely stupid and actually almost killed my interest in this match. only because the match is so novel and the fact that it hasn't really happened. That's what makes this so interesting. The question is, does this main event? Absolutely not. This probably goes on first, if we're being honest. So, Big E versus Drew McIntyre ought to be a well-worked match. They ought to go out there and beat each other up. It ought to be fun. It ought to be great. But I don't see the title changing hands. I'm going to go with Big E. The King of the Ring, Finn Balor versus Xavier Woods. I said on the Raw review, Finn Balor should win this match and then use this to challenge Big E for the WWE title. I maintain that. That should happen. Finn Balor needs something. You know, he is the most marketable guy WWE has never done anything with. When you look at all the guys that WWE can market, as far as being top stars and top draws, Finn Balor is the one guy that, you know, people was like, he's going to be huge. This was like almost 10 years ago now. And people was like, Finn Balor is going to be excellent, you know, because they were doing the thing with the Demon and he was a huge star in NXT. And then they just kind of slotted him as a upper mid-card, not quite mid-card, but an upper mid-card guy where he occasionally main events, but he doesn't really get into feuds unless they're big feuds, unless there are feuds with titles involved. Otherwise, he doesn't really get involved in feuds. Finn Balor at this point should be a 2 or 3 time world champion and being able to have feuds without the title. You know, but we're at the point now where Finn Balor cannot and has not really had feuds without titles. And to me, that's becoming the mainstay of whether a guy can hold a feud without a title. That's truly the mark of a main event guy. Can you hold a feud without a title? Finn Balor can, but they won't put him in that position. So he needs to be in that position. He needs to be in that conversation of guys who can, even if there's no Intercontinental title, no US title, no King of the Ring, nothing on the line, you still want to see Finn Balor beat up this guy or see Finn Balor get beat up. He's not on that level yet. He needs to get there. And I think the King of the Ring can really help with that. Xavier Woods, the only reason Xavier Woods would win is because he made it public over a year ago, over 2 years ago, that all he ever wanted was to be the King of the Ring. It's really the only reason anybody would consider Xavier Woods winning this match. I think the match is going to be great. Xavier Woods has put on his wrestling boots when he's put in one-on-one matches. He's really done a good job of getting over his matches. He knows how to put over his opponent. He knows how to get over. You know, Triple H has said that, you know, the only thing holding back Xavier Woods is his size. You know, and I think that they're probably still holding that against him. The question is, where does Xavier Woods go? You make him the King of the Ring, then what? He just becomes King of the Ring. He becomes King Woods, King X. He's still in New Day. He's still buddies with Kofi and Big E. He's not going to challenge Big E for the title. You know, he might challenge Roman, but do you really believe Xavier Woods can beat Roman Reigns? Now, they can make it believable like they did with Jey Uso, but the next event is Survivor Series. So, unless it's Xavier Woods versus Roman Reigns on TV, which you could do, and then what? Roman beats him, and you gave the guy the King of the Ring for what? He's not going to separate from New Day. So, I think you get more out of Finn Balor being the King of the Ring than you get out of Xavier Woods winning the King of the Ring. Xavier Woods winning the King of the Ring would just be a feel-good moment, which is temporary, and he's going to go right back to being your WWE and all that junk right after that. So I think you make Finn Balor the King of the Ring, and I think you use that to launch his heel turn. I said it on the Raw review. I maintain that you should do that. Queen of the Ring, Zelina Vega versus Doudrop. I think from looking at the perspective of where do you go from here, Zelina Vega has done a lot of jobs since she came back. And a lot of people were pretty pissy that Zelina Vega was losing all the time. You could probably go back and find a lot of blue check marks. Like, oh, Zelina Vega came back to WWE to be a jobber. And then she beat Toni Storm. And they were like, oh my God, Zelina Vega beat Toni Storm. What the hell is going on in the history of this sport? And people are, you know, you can't win, right? I think that Zelina Vega her ceiling is capped by her size. She is so petite, just like Alexa Bliss, just like, you know, Liv Morgan and Xia Li and so many women that are very, very small. She's not a legitimate competitor to the Biancas or the Charlottes or the Rheas. You know, if she was to become Queen of the Ring, it would be great for her character, and I think she can pull it off. And she looks amazing in the crowd, in the crown and the robe. With the scepter and everything, she would look fantastic. And there's no doubt in my mind she would be able to carry it and be able to do really great things with it. Like if she was to do like an address, I think it would be fantastic. But where do you go with that? You know, Zelina Vega, it would change her perception from being a jobber to being something else. But when she stands toe to toe with Bianca or Becky, it's not going to be the best look because they're so much bigger than she is. And that's the only problem I have with Zelina Vega winning. It's not going to be believable for her to beat somebody the size of Doudrop. Unless she cheats, which you can do. You can have, brass knuckles. You can throw dirt in her eyes or whatever the case may be. But it's going to be very hard coming up with a way to creatively have Doudrop lose this match and have Zelina Vega win it. You know, since Doudrop is still on Raw, this might actually continue the feud. So that's the case. But I'm going to go with Doudrop winning this match. I think, again, looking at the size, I think Doudrop is going to end up replacing Nia Jax as the big woman in the division. I don't like her character, but this could lead to a change in her character. As most people have said, the king, queen of the ring is always a thing that is better for heels to win. And I think that if we were to do this and Doudrop was to win, it could be a great opportunity for her. It could be a good push. I think you can see Doudrop being in the match against Charlotte. She's already wrestled Charlotte, but that match was very short. You can see Doudrop get in there with Rhea. You can see her in there with Bianca. You can see her in there with Becky. And having different kinds of matches due to her size, she can get in there and tangle with them in believable matches. You know, I personally would have her as sort of the Bam Bam Bigelow of the division, which is, I know it's typecast in big people, but fuck, it works. So do what works. You know, tell the visual story. I think Doudrop should win this match in 35 seconds. And that should be that. Now, if you want to introduce somebody as Zelina's second, you know, a Raquel Gonzalez or something like that, who clobbers Doudrop and then Zelina wins, and then if you could continue this feud of Zelina Vega and Doudrop into the future, okay, fine. But I think it's a missed opportunity. I think you go ahead and make Doudrop the queen of the ring. And then you prepare Doudrop to face the Raw Women's Champion and win that title. Now, having said that, I'm going to say this here because I think this is kind of my conspiracy theory. I think that Survivor Series is going to be the time, unless they do that silly belt swap, which they, the Becky Charlotte belt swap. I think it's going to be where they're probably going to create an interim Raw Women's Champion and an interim SmackDown Women's Champion. And I think that would be smart to have the champion, the interim SmackDown Women's Champion versus Becky Lynch at Survivor Series to unify the titles and for one of them to be the SmackDown Women's Champion. And do the same thing with Raw, but then you just have Becky lose the belt to whoever. And then you have Charlotte lose the belt to whoever. Specifically Charlotte, because I do believe as we get into the triple threat match that we're going to deal with the SmackDown problem pretty quickly. So I think Charlotte should keep the title and move to SmackDown. She should just be walking around with the belt. And then they have an interim champion on Raw. And then Survivor Series is champion versus champion, right? Have the Raw Women's Champion, the interim Raw Women's Champion versus Charlotte, who is the linear Women's Champion. And say that if Charlotte wins, she has to move back to Raw. But if she loses, she just loses her title. I think that would make the match bigger. And I think that would be a great opportunity for somebody. And it seems to me like that would be a great spot for Bianca Belair or Doudrop. Okay, so we're going to go with that. The triple threat match, Sasha Banks versus Becky Lynch versus Bianca Belair. I think Bianca Belair is just in this match to take a pin. That's the only reason I think she's even in it. She can't win because then she's not going to be on SmackDown. She's going to be on Raw. So theoretically, the only person in this match that's on SmackDown is Sasha Banks. Therefore, Sasha Banks is going to win the match. Sasha Banks has already pinned Becky Lynch. And I think that they should have saved that for Saudi Arabia. But hey, Sasha Banks wins the women's title because it makes the most sense. Sure, Bianca Belair kind of got gypped out of this whole ordeal because now the horsewomen are back. And you know how that goes. The horsewomen get everything. But at the same time, she has been in there. She's been mixing it up. She's looked like she deserves to be there. She's tested all three of them, all four of them, really. She's beaten Bayley, beaten Sasha, almost beat Becky, nearly beat Charlotte. They're keeping her in the mix, which is a good thing. But eventually she has to get over that hump. And, you know, she's probably going to be like that Asuka tier, you know, where she can beat them occasionally, but in the long term, they're going to end up winning. So I think she's going to end up taking the pin in this match. And Sasha Banks is going to win the title. And it's just going to make sense. You know, it's just perfect sense. Sasha Banks is going to be the one on SmackDown with the title because she's the one that's going to SmackDown anyway. And then maybe Sasha Banks ends up having to wrestle somebody else. I don't know which women are still on SmackDown. You still have your Carmellas and your Liv Morgans there and all that kind of stuff, I think. I can tell you who is on SmackDown that's going to be a threat to Sasha, except for maybe the return of Bayley. And maybe that's going to be the point, is that Sasha is going to be the champion when Bayley returns. And Bayley is going to return to a massive reaction and going to be the babyface in their never-ending feud. Okay, cool. Whatever. But I think Sasha Banks definitely is going to win that match. Okay, RK Bro versus AJ Styles and Amos for the tag team championships. I like RK Bro, but they've hit a skid to the point where I just think that they're spinning their wheels. I don't see this really, the story moving forward. You would think that winning the tag team titles would change their relationship, because why would Randy Orton want to be in a situation where he's losing? You know, theoretically, even if he didn't care about the belts, he should care about winning and losing. He shouldn't want to get beat up. He shouldn't want to have to fight these guys by himself. Why would he? Why would he want to be in that situation? So he kind of needs Riddle. So he should be trying to, at the very least, make sure Riddle doesn't get his ass beat. But in any event, AJ Styles is one of those guys, like I said before, who can carry a feud without a title. He doesn't really need Amos. You know, Amos needs him. Now, they're doing a good thing with building up that storyline between those two, where now AJ Styles is starting to, you know, take control, and Amos is starting to look at AJ as a mentor. And, you know, AJ is calling the shots, you know, telling him, I want to see a round kick, and then Amos round kicks the guy. You know, and it's very cool. But I don't think they need the belts. The question then becomes, what do they do without the belts? And I think you just have AJ there with Amos. You know, you kind of pull back AJ Styles a little bit, and you let Amos run as a solo act. And I think that's the next phase of Amos and AJ Styles. But what is indeed the next phase for Rated RK Bro? If the team isn't finally going to gel and Randy's going to become buddies with Riddle, if they're going to continue to be the odd couple, that's going to get, it's already gotten kind of stale. It's really going to get even worse, especially if Randy's going to be making sporadic appearances. He's not going to be on Raw every week, which, you know, he hasn't been recently. He hasn't always been the most visible on Raw, which is good because it, you know, allows Riddle for Riddle to go forward. We also need to see more than Riddle being a dummy. You know, we need to show more of that character. Ultimately, I do think that RK Bro is going to win. So, there that go. No holds barred. Lashley versus Goldberg. The face-to-face thing where Goldberg is just insisting that he is going to murder Lashley, and it's going to be a literal murder, and it's going to be a premeditated murder of Lashley. And Lashley is offended and wants to call the authority. I'm going to call the authorities. You want to kill me. This match should be. It's not going to be long. I don't see. I don't know. How many matches have Goldberg had in the WWE where there had been any rules? Because the brilliance of the Goldberg match is that they're short and violent. If they're done right, they're short and violent. People are hit very hard. Things are done somewhat poorly. There's going to be some ugly bumps, but we all walk out of there thinking, "Whoa, that was something. That was a spectacle, at least." The storyline going into the match, of course, is that Bill Goldberg wants to be the WWE champion. He ends up having this match with Lashley. Lashley ends up decimating him. Goldberg's son jumps in the ring. Lashley puts him in the hurt lock. It's a complete accident. Goldberg says it was no accident. It was no mixed communication. He's going to tear Lashley apart. Looking at that story, the story tells you the Goldberg is going to win. That's because you can't have people invading someone's home. You can't have anybody attacking your kids, and then you give up to them, you tap out to them, you get pinned by them. I just don't see that working. That kills your heroes. To not go too far into another company, but if somebody, insults your sister, insults your hometown, says your dad is in hell, you shouldn't lose. Okay? You just shouldn't lose. As a babyface, you should have some pride and you should have some fire, and you should always continue to push forward. To me, Lashley doesn't really lose that much in losing to Bill Goldberg. If you can't lose to Bill Goldberg, then you shouldn't be in the ring, period, at all, anyway. Because most guys should be able to take a loss. That's the magic of pro wrestling, is to make wins and losses not really matter that much. And if you're going to be on a tilt where wins and losses matter a whole hell of a lot, then why would anybody want to participate? It's like boxing at that point. Nobody wants to fight anybody because nobody wants to lose. Only UFC, and I think this Chael Sonnen said this, that, that Dana White is the only fight promoter, even when it comes to Vince, that has made wins and losses not really matter that much. That guys in the UFC just want to fight for the great fight. They want to fight for the money, and if they lose, they lose. But when you look at boxing and when you look at pro wrestling, people don't want to do the match unless they win. And I think at this stage of his career, Goldberg doesn't need to win. But when you wrote the story the way that you wrote it, you don't want to have a guy defending the honor of his family and he loses. That's just cutting his balls off. You can't do that, So if they had done this storyline in some way where Goldberg was swearing revenge for what happened at SummerSlam, or, I wasn't done with you, then yeah, I could see Lashley beating Goldberg, and that was that. But when you have the storyline of the guys, you hurt my son, yeah, he's not going to lose. As they did it to Ray on SmackDown, right? Where he, Roman powerbombed Dominic outside the ring, and then Ray got beat by Roman in the Hell in a Cell match. And the Mysterios have not been the same since. Because what do you do? How do you go forward after that? You did the most atrocious thing you could possibly do to a parent. You assaulted their child right in front of them, and they still couldn't beat you. Okay, so you're impotent, you're weak, and the crowd that was behind you is gonna look at you like, damn, even with that, you couldn't fight through it. Yeah, you don't want to do that to Goldberg. Now, if you do it to Ray is small, of course. So, there's always going to be that Ray is very small. So it's always going to be a built-in excuse. But Goldberg, unless you're going to really run with the fact that Goldberg is really, really old, and therefore, hey, of course he's not going to be able to beat Lashley. Goldberg is old as hell. Then I think Goldberg wins. It's unfortunate, but I think Goldberg wins. Mansoor versus Mustafa Ali. This match is going to be, I think this is going to be the dark horse match of the night. I think the Saudis will be more into this than into most of the other matches on the show, for obvious reasons, that Mansoor is from Saudi Arabia. At the same time, the story has been pretty simple. It is simple, student versus teacher. And I don't like that they really haven't shown what Mustafa Ali was supposedly have taught Mansoor. But I do like the twists and the turns that they had in the story. For instance, when Mansoor, being a nice guy, got into some trouble, Mustafa Ali was there to try to pull it back. There was that one time when Mustafa Ali pushed Mansoor out of the way and took the beating for him, or when he tried to defend Mansoor and got beat up. And there was matches where Mansoor would pick the fight and Mustafa Ali would be there by his side. And then it obviously kind of melted down from there when Mustafa Ali was tired of Mansoor not listening to him, never listening to him. So there's opportunity here. There's a good story here. But I think this is going to probably be the shortest match on the card. But I definitely think this match would be, well, it probably won't be the shortest. I think, there'll probably be another match on this card that's probably be shorter. But I definitely see this being probably the most fun match for me to watch, at least. Because at least it's guys who are different doing different stuff. And I like to see different, So there they go. And the main event, Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar for the Universal title. The question mark on this is, where does his allegiance lie? Of course, there's been this thing that this is a long storyline with Roman and Paul, and you're my tribal chief. And now Brock is back, and Paul was like, you could just challenge for the WWE title. We could do all these things together. But Brock is being Brock, and Brock wants to bully Roman. And now he's created this situation between Roman and Paul. And how are we going to, I don't want to say end this, but how are we going to push this thing to the next level? How are we going to answer this question? Well, at first, I said to myself, Paul has a history of backstabbing every single guy he manages. He backstabbed Brock. He backstabbed He backstabbed CM Punk. He backstabbed Curtis Axel. He backstabbed Cesaro. He backstabbed pretty much everybody except Roman so far. He backstabbed Big Show too. And Rob Van Dam. So it is possible that he could stab Roman in the back. But I think I would turn Roman babyface. And I don't think they want to do that yet. And plus, putting the title on Brock doesn't really do us any favors, does it? It takes the title out of commission for a while. What I think we need to do is we need to go ahead and show that Heyman is in Roman's corner 100%. He has full allegiance to the tribal chief. And that said, Roman destroys Paul Heyman. I think that's the goal. I think Roman wins the match. He beats Brock. And then Paul is, happy. He's celebrating, yada, yada, yada. And then Roman kills Paul. Maybe he spears Paul. Maybe he chokes Paul out. And we turn Heyman babyface. It's going to be very difficult to do. But I think it could work. Because I think Brock and Paul as babyfaces versus Roman later. Roman doesn't need a manager, He doesn't really need a wise man or an advisor or a suck up or anything like that. He's got the Usos. And I think the Usos definitely will factor into the finish in this match. Where it'll probably be the Usos all over the place and Suplex City with these guys being thrown around. And then, Brock gets caught in a guillotine choke or something like that and can't get out. Something to that effect. But I don't think Roman needs Paul. And I think he ditches Paul. And then we go into the WrestleMania stretch with Roman without Paul. And that being the new thing. And I think it takes Roman's character to the next level because it shows that he's willing to, and maybe he even uses that excuse. Paul can't be trusted. Paul has backstabbed everybody. We go through the history of Paul backstabbing everybody. And that he saw Paul Heyman's deception coming a mile away. And that he turned on Paul before Paul turned on him. And then you take Heyman and Brock off the stage for a little while. Let Roman run by himself a little bit. He can cut his own promos. Maybe you bring in somebody else, to do different things to freshen up how the bloodline looks. I've heard of Naomi being bantered about. Maybe you do that. And you reintroduce Brock and Paul later, maybe near WrestleMania or the Royal Rumble or something like that. Now, I wouldn't necessarily go with Brock and Roman again, but I see them being baby faces. I think it could work. I just don't think that there's the big payoff, the big swerve could be putting the belt on Brock because Paul turned on Roman, which, you could always do that, but it would turn Roman babyface. It wouldn't be Roman getting his comeuppance because of all the dastardly, horrible shit that he's done. That wouldn't be the case. It would be simply the manipulation of Paul Heyman. It would make Roman look very weird, by the way, that he got outsmarted by the wise man. Which, some people would say, he's the wise man, he should outsmart him. Like, nah. Roman doesn't need Paul. But I think what will end up happening, and this is going to be my guess, is that Paul is going to help Roman win and prove that he is in Roman's corner once and for all. And it's going to solidify, it's going to answer that question about whether Paul is really in the bloodline or not. And the answer is going to be yes. And then there's not going to be any more questions, except for what the fuck happened to that top rope at Extreme Rules. And somebody's going to give me an answer to that goddamn question. All right. So those are my predictions. My predictions: Roman Reigns, Sasha Banks, Mansoor, RK Bro, Goldberg, Doudrop, Finn Balor, Big E, and Edge. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Like, share, and subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later.